Hey, good morning to you, everybody. Mark Sudduth here. Hurricane Track, that's our YouTube channel, that's our brand. Good to be with you for Talking Weather now. It is Monday, the 22nd day of December 2025, and just going to banter with you for a couple of minutes as we wait for people to get their notifications from YouTube. Log on and join this here show where we just discuss different weather topics, look ahead toward the Christmas holiday travel period, which is going to be a really excellent segment today. I've got a great guest coming in regards to that. We'll get to that, of course. Also, going to look at the big time storm system, actual multiple storm systems coming into the West Coast, and then just other things in between. Again, killing a couple minutes here before we formally get started as we wait for people to come in. Bright sunshine coming into my office here. I don't need any additional lighting, which is great. Finally starting to warm it up here in southeast North Carolina. Got the t-shirt on again today, and we're going to be probably 70 degrees here on Christmas Day. That is pretty wild to think. But yeah, we saw that coming from some of the long range guidance, and alas, it is coming. So, what do we got? Let's see who we have on the chat so far today. Nobody just yet, so we'll await our usual crowd. It's Monday. It is the first day of the work week, the first day of the last few days before Christmas gets here, and I imagine a lot of people are going to be out shopping and getting those last minute gifts. I know Wilmington was very busy Friday, and I think it'll be the same today. And just stay home and order off Amazon, I guess. The brick and mortar probably don't want to hear me say that, but yeah, it's pretty crazy out there. So let me show you the lineup for today, the topics, as it were. And yeah, major travel day, one of the busiest of the year. And again, we're going to have a special guest coming on to talk about that in just a little bit. And then we got these big ticket West Coast storms. That's a good term there, not meteorological, but it gets the point across that we really do have these major winter storms coming in to the Pacific Northwest and the West Coast. And again, they've had so much rain and flooding in Washington and Oregon that this is definitely not needed, but it's coming. And we're going to discuss that at a pretty good length here. Record warm Christmas. Yeah, it looks that way. Again, that was advertised as coming in, and that is, in fact, what we're going to see. It does appear. And then is El Nino coming in 26? Good chance of it. We'll discuss that towards the end of today's update. And like I said, we've got a terrific guest coming in a little while to talk about air travel, and we're going to talk about FlightAware and just all things related because he's a pilot for a major airline. So that's going to be very informative and helpful for you, I think, not just for today being a major travel day, but just in the future. And we'll have him on in just a few minutes. All right. So let's get through some of the usual stuff that we go over here on Talking Weather. And by the way, hello to Weather Scott and Scott Pearson. The odds that we have two Scots jumping on as our first people on the chat, I don't know, probably a lot better than the Powerball, which is approaching probably close to $2 billion again today. That's insane. I'm definitely going to go get a ticket later to get my 1 in 292 million shot at doing whatever I want to do, right? Anyway, we'll see. But great to see you folks on here. Hey, we've got Karen as well. So the two Scots and Karen, good morning to you. So one of our segments that I really enjoy doing because I'm a geography guy and I like stats and weather, of course. So we've mixed it all up. Got the national high and low temperatures for yesterday, December 21st. And I pulled these, of course, from official National Weather Service sources. This comes from this tweet that they put out overnight, every night, proclaiming what the highs and lows were. And the high temperature for yesterday nationally, again, was down in La Puerta and Hidalgo in Texas. So sometimes you share if two different reporting sites, whether it's a true WFO, Weather Forecast Office, sometimes a Weather Service Office, a WSO, or just a random station, maybe an ASOS station or something. Then you get, if two of them have the same temperature, then there will be multiple. So anyway, that's why we have La Puerta and Hidalgo. And then the low temperature yesterday was minus 21, way up north in Indus, Minnesota. And when I show you how close that is to the Canadian border, it is quite remarkable. And especially when you look at, and they're again almost lined up longitudinally, not quite longitudinally, whatever, but the high temperature down here in Hidalgo also extremely close to the Mexican border. And we started something last week where I show you where these places are because we should learn something, learn a little bit of geography, and sometimes you see something funny or whatever that we learned last week when I showed Gunnison, Colorado, and the Google person. I just dropped the Street View person, and the Google Street View driver was at Taco Bell. Really funny stuff, totally by accident. So, with all that being said, let's start down here in Hidalgo area. I showed La Porta last week. So I figured let's show Hidalgo today since they are sharing. And one thing I want to point out, grab the telestrator here. So this would be the Rio Grande River. And you notice how it snakes around. You got these different oxbows and whatnot. You know, I didn't realize this, as smart as I am. And I'm okay, pretty smart with geography and whatnot. I didn't realize how much of a meander that the river has. And since that is the border between the US and Mexico, you could be standing, let's get this red color going, and then I'll show you Hidalgo. You could be standing over here and be in the United States looking east, and you're looking into Mexico. Isn't that weird? In fact, if you're over here and then your buddy is sitting up here, he is north and east of you. He is technically in the country of Mexico. That's That just blows my mind. I didn't realize that how much of a meander that the Rio Grande River has in this part of Texas. So there's that. I learned something today in researching all of this. And so here is Hidalgo. And before we do our dropping of the Street View guy down here, and we just plop him in somewhere to show you what Hidalgo looks like, I do have to look at this, the world's largest killer bee. Yikes. I don't know. I mean, okay, there you go. So, what does Hidalgo look like? And they had the national high temperature yesterday of 90. So, we'll just throw, you know what, let's throw the Google Maps guy pretty close to the world's largest killer bee. And wouldn't you know it, it's Christmas time when this was taken. What are the clues? And this is what's fun about this. I think it is anyway. You can figure out when the photograph was taken seasonally just by looking at different clues. And sure enough, there's a wreath. So this was taken during Christmas season. And they're at some park here in Hidalgo, in Texas. A dreary looking day. The wind is up a little bit because you can see the flags blowing. So, yeah, all kinds of. And there's the Hidalgo City Hall as well. So, this, my friends, is Hidalgo, Texas. And it says the image was captured, wow, way back in December of 2016. That's a long time ago now. That is, if my math serves, right, 9 years ago. Just kidding. Of course, my math serves and something's that simple. This is a 9-year-old picture and just shows you kind of how far back. Now we've moved, talk about back to the future. There you go. This was captured this past April. I didn't plan this either. That's really funny. So we can go this way and we can go back in time. Maybe. Is it going to do it? No, I just got really lucky, I guess, that when I dragged the Google Street View guy, it plopped me into 2016. Time travel on Google. What a just wow. That's terrific. Anyway, that's what it looks like down there in Hidalgo in Texas, where yesterday's 90-degree temperature occurred. All right. Now let's check out Indus, Minnesota. What do you guys think about that? We'll look at the chat here. That was pretty weird, isn't it? I thought so. Going back in time, went from winter 2016 to April of 25 on Google. Maybe that was a glitch. By the way, my daughter, my 10-year-old, so smart, she asked me yesterday, what does it mean when someone says there's a glitch in the matrix? And then she says, are we in the matrix? I'm just like, okay, time to reduce the screen time that you're having on the iPad, clearly. Anyway, so maybe there was some weird glitch down there with the Google. All right, so let's look at Indus, Minnesota, where, reminder if you're just tuning in, why is he doing this? We are looking at the national high and low temperatures and where they occurred geographically. This is Indus, North Dakota. No, this is Minnesota. And this too, right across the river there from Canada. And yeah, so this is Indus, and there's just not much there. No world's largest killer bee, that is for sure. As I zoom out, you see, well, let's find the central business district. No, there doesn't appear to be one. And I'm going to be surprised, I'll tell you. This is the Waters of the Dancing Sky Scenic Byway. Maybe that'll have a Google Street View. So let's see if the main road here does. No, it does not. It looks like this does, though. Does it? Yes. So here's that byway, and this was taken back in 21. This is August of 2021. About the only thing that I can show you. Again, this is why I like doing this. I was not expecting that. All right. Howdy, partner. What do we got going on here? My man's got a GoPro or woman, who knows, on there. So they did the Google Street View thing using a motorcycle. Oh, wish CJ was on here today. He's got a business meeting that was not scheduled, and now it is. And so he couldn't join me. That is hilarious. Okie dokes. So I didn't know that you could do your Google Street View. Oh man. Wow. Got himself a nice Pelican case right there or something similar. This is really fun. Oh, went to somewhere shopping. This is some toad. Hey, when Google says their whole thing about privacy policies and whatnot, why is that happening? Whoops. Well, there you go. I have exited it for some reason. I screwed up. So see, there we go. We can still see our motorcycle friend. Yeah, you can just see everything you want to see, where they shopped, what they're riding. Hopefully they agreed to the terms of service. And I just noticed the horns. What is even happening back in 2021? All right, so that is Indus, Minnesota, as far as I can tell. I don't think that it will let me drop right here on this main road. Let's just try it one more time. No, it's only this blue area. See, when I try, I get rejected. Bummer. Just wanted to see if there's any place closer. This is a little bit closer to the border, the river there. And is it our same motorcycle person? Yes, it is. They were doing a yeoman's job. So that is not towards the water. So the water, oh yeah, there it is. So anyway, that's Canada right over there. And that is the river, whatever the river is called. And this is the Land of the Dancing Sky Scenic Byway in Minnesota, where yesterday's low temperature of a whopping minus 21 Fahrenheit took place. Yes, this segment is going to be fun. I like that. That is hilarious. I was not expecting that. All right, we're going to get into the current weather in just a moment, checking in on the chat just briefly, see how things are going with everybody. Karen and Howard and the two Scots, just the biggest killer bee in Hidalgo, right? Yeah. Oh, this is funny. Howard in Bermuda says probably playing Steppenwolf as they ride. Yes, I like that. Does the Matrix talk happen before or after the birds and the bees talk? Exactly. So the Matrix talk in this situation, Howard, happening a little bit before it. Good catch there. Good to see everybody too. Don't forget, look, while you're on here, you know people. So send them the YouTube link and say, hey, Fred or Diane or whoever, you might want to see this. This is cool. You have nothing else to do. You're drinking your coffee, eating your bagel. Check out what's happening with Mark on Talking Weather, and then tell them there is an extremely exciting segment coming up with an actual real live pilot who's going to tell us all about flight misery from FlightAware, the misery map and traveling and just scary moments, whatever, turbulence. That's all coming. So do your part and let people know we're doing this. All right. All right, so here we are, national weather map here from weather.gov. There it is right up there. Use it. You pay for it with your taxes, at least hopefully so. And there's lots of great info like what I'm going to show you. So let's start off with a few things that are very obvious. Number one, pretty much east of the Mississippi here, we're good. Just a little bit of, just a few counties. There's something right over here in eastern Maine. Let's just click on that and see what's going on over there. A winter storm watch just for a handful of counties in southeast Maine. Is that also called down east Maine? Maybe our friend Scott in South Carolina can tell me. He is very knowledgeable about that kind of stuff. You know the old expression, between me and my brother, we know everything. Well, between Scott and myself, or Scott and me, right? However it is grammatically, we know everything. When I travel with him, he helps out with winter storms and sometimes some severe weather stuff. And last year or last season, we went out to Arizona for the monsoon, and the guy is just on the money. So maybe he can tell me, is that down East Maine, where there are winter storm watches very randomly placed? Anyway, so east of the Mississippi here, nice. East of the Rockies, nice. We're good. So a good two-thirds, easy fraction for you there. One third, two-thirds, the third third, which makes a whole. Those fractions I can do. We're looking pretty good. But west of the Rockies here, especially the West Coast, not looking so good at all. In fact, this is very serious stuff. Lots of flash flood watches and warnings going on. Well, the warnings are coming. Some of them are underway, but this is really looking. I mean, I know they needed the snow, but this is not good. Okay. So we got a winter storm watch and warning in effect for the Sierras, of course, where they're looking at 3 to 5 feet of snow. And I tell you what, there's very few places in the world where they talk about snowfall in feet, and this is one of them. And if it were not for Christmas, I am definitely a family man. I don't miss Christmas unless there is a bona fide hurricane that's going to make landfall in the U.S. I am not missing Christmas with the family, period. And so otherwise, I would be out there. And that's not, oh, well, he doesn't want to be. No, I'm just saying this is the kind of thing that I would cover if I was a single guy. All right. And family's too important, though, so I'll cover it from afar. In fact, a friend of mine is going to be heading that direction. We'll talk about that too. Anyway, that's a lot of snow. And yes, that would be something I would be highly interested in covering, but Christmas is Christmas. But this is very serious because it's going to be storm after storm. I'm going to show you this as we get into the modeling. Flood watch into this week, midweek thunderstorm potential, and then Bear Creek. They're concerned about this in Merced, and then stronger winds starting on Tuesday. So all these great infographics for you if you're interested in the weather in this part of California. So you can put your zip code up here, type in a location, you can just click on the map. Even southern Nevada, flood watch, that includes Vegas and Pahrump, where our good friend Paul lives, and we have a camera out there, of course. We'll look at that tomorrow once this starts to really get going. So ponding of water, water flowing in normally dry washes, or arroyos as they call them, rock slides, the increased number of traffic accidents. That is absolutely true. I'm glad they put that on there. Good job there, National Weather Service Vegas. Well done. Um, and yeah, so I've got a friend who got several friends that live out there. One of them, Tracy Wilson, and she works at a major newspaper in Vegas, and she's going to be heading north with a friend of hers up to Reno and eventually into the Sierras, hopefully, the day after Christmas. So we're going to check in with her on the 26th and see what's happening with her travels. She's going to go up through Vegas, through Beatty, Tonopah, and then on up towards Reno on the loneliest highway in America. And we'll see what's happening from her perspective, hopefully live, as long as she's got a signal. I should have sent her my Starlink. Oh, well, maybe next time. But yeah, that's what's happening out west. And we're going to examine this more with a couple of tweets coming up. But major, major problems. And this will affect air travel because you got San Francisco, we got LA, and that's going to lead us into when we talk to our pilot friend here in just a little bit. Meanwhile, in parts of the Rockies, we do have some winter weather as well. Not necessarily related to this storm system, but your higher elevations here in the Rockies, you are going to get winter weather more easily simply because they are higher up and the temperatures are colder. In fact, in here, I believe these are avalanche warnings in some of these areas, and that would be correct. Avalanche warning, um, very heavy snow, and it gets displaced just enough. Anybody doing any backcountry skiing or hunting, that kind of stuff's important. So just a reminder, you're traveling anywhere, you want to be on top of the weather. This is so easy. Weather.gov. You click on the map if you know your maps well enough, or you put in your city, state, zip code, whatever, and you're golden. Down on the Gulf Coast, though, we do have fog that's got things socked in and around Houston. And of course, you have Bush and Hobby down there for major airports. And we're getting there. We're going to be leading up to our conversation here in a moment with my good friend who's a pilot. And we're going to discuss all this. Landing the plane in fog. I can't wait to ask him about that. But yeah, we do have foggy conditions. You know what else is down here? That 17-mile bridge that goes through the Atchafalaya River Basin. And when that gets to visibilities, let's just see what they are. It's between Baton Rouge and Lafayette, if I'm not mistaken. Or is it before Baton Rouge? Maybe it is, but whatever. I've traveled enough, you'd think I would know. But it looks like the fog is just offshore, not quite into. Well, there's Baton Rouge there. Let's just click on Baton Rouge, dense fog advisory, and we'll click the advisory itself and see what they're saying. So a quarter mile, that's low. It's when you get towards zero. My point was here that you could see backups if you're not careful on that Atchafalaya River Bridge, whatever that's called, the river basin. But that thing's 17 miles long and it gets screwed up easily. So you add nasty fog in there and you can only imagine, right? All right, let's head back over and click the ad away. Thank you, Mr. Ad. See who we got on here. We got Wild Earth 33992. Hello, good to see you. And just see if there's anybody brand new that we don't recognize yet. Not that we don't like our regular guests. I do like these. See, Weather Scott, the dancing sky refers to the Aurora Borealis. Told you, this guy, or the northern lights, which frequently appear in the area thanks to its far northern location and absence of bright city lights. Yeah, that was referring to the Indus, Minnesota um, discussion earlier where we saw they don't even have a central business district. What's up with that? Tell you what, if I win that almost $2 billion Powerball, we'll build a central business district. Maybe they don't want me to, so there's that. But anyway, um, what else? Somebody was saying so the fire season will be non-existent in January, February because the soil will be saturated. That is exactly right, and a great, great observation. Um, Wild Earth 3992, with all that rainfall, you don't have to worry about the fires. But past fires create these burn scars, and then you can get debris flows, mud flows, mainly debris, and the flash flooding can be very serious. So the two go hand in hand, seemingly. All right. So let's look at the satellite here real quick as we start to get into some of the model guidance. And clearly, I think anyway, I can pick it out. Let's see if you can. You can see what's going on. There is your source, the atmospheric river coming in off the Pacific around a large area of high pressure that's clearly sitting out here somewhere. And that's just eyeballing it. Some troughing in the east, as you can see as well. It is a little bit chillier here today. Not too bad. We're going to definitely warm it up because this big upper ridge is going to expand all across the east and give us a very warm Christmas experience. All right, so Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, the day after. And then you can see, because it is winter, and even though we're just past the winter solstice, the nights are still pretty long, so the air cools, and you get this low cloud and fog deal that develops because of that. So all kinds of wintry stuff happening as we check out the satellite here. And then here's what's happening. I want to show you this. Very, very important. Over the next few days, the tremendous impact this is going to have. We already know about what's been happening in Washington and Oregon, especially up here in Washington with the flooding. And that is not done. There's people that are going to have their Christmas at a shelter or at a hotel or whatever because of the flooding that happened with all the relentless rainfall over the last couple of weeks. Well, unfortunately, this is a 6Z GFS. It's going to continue with more rain coming in, but the focus of everything is going to be farther to the south, where we're going to have incredible amounts of rain all the way down to Southern California, snow up here in the higher elevations of the Sierras, and then wind. The wind is going to be coming in because it's just one storm after another coming into the area, blanketing a good deal of the entire region in snow in the higher elevations, rain down at the lower elevations, and the potential for very heavy rainfall at that. Finally, the pattern dries out after these two major storm systems pinwheel in, and then the pattern does start to dry out as we approach the new year. Maybe not. This starts to get into the rumors of storms segment, so we're going to wait because we only like to look out at about a week because that's the most reliable time frame. But even at 1 week out, you're starting to see the markers here of maybe some more disturbed weather developing farther to the south. But we'll look at that as we go into the last segment of today's update. So speaking of out west, I did want to show you this. Lots, I think Colin's got the most tweets that I've shown since I started this show. Very important stuff here. Great information. I appreciate it. It's easy for me to share. Extremely concerning rain totals are forecast for Southern California, and flood watch has been issued for the entire region. Los Angeles is forecast to see 7.5 inches of rain. How many of you know how insane that is? 7.5 inches of rain. So we started the year. In fact, this is full screen mode here because this is important. We started the year, if we remember, and we should, with a terrible fire situation in Southern California. The Palisades fire and all that devastation. Remember that? It was apocalyptic, a horrifying way to begin 2025. Now, as hard as this is to imagine, we're going to end the year with potentially catastrophic flooding events, isolated though, luckily, in the same areas. And those fires that we had in the beginning of the year are going to have an impact on the rainfall because, again, we're going to get massive, the potential anyway. We don't know the future for sure, but the potential is there. And Colin mentions it right here. Burn scars will be a major concern. The Eaton Fire burn scar may see 10 to 15 inches of rain, which could trigger significant flooding and dangerous debris flows. And this is just, needless to say, a very bad situation. You need the rain, but this is going to be way too much in a quite short period of time. So yeah, we're going to bookend 2025 in and itself as it's been since 2020, just another dumpster fire of a year, depending on how you look at it. I mean, some stuff's been obviously very positive, but I mean, weather-wise, this is not good for our friends out there in the Golden State. All right. So the forecast for the rest of the country, not so dire. And this really is dire. That's why we're talking about it. This is not hyperbole. These are the facts. This is a real big problem, and we're going to have to see how this unfolds. We'll talk about it more, certainly on tomorrow's show and on Christmas Eve. We will be here Christmas Eve. All right, so while not indicated on the map itself, again, this is the GFS 6Z run. This is the full lower 48 over here. We don't see the blue H, but I promise you, it's sitting out here. There's good high pressure in control. So our storm track is kind of up and over following the ridge trough pattern. So let's move this out over the next 7 days. We see our storms coming in to the west. And I see now why the winter storm watch was issued for parts of Maine, because there's going to be a little bit of a clipper system right there coming across southern Canada, dipping south and east over the top of that high. And there will be some wintry weather for our friends here in Maine. So there you go. Now we understand. But after that, not too bad, except again out west. This is 4 days out and then 5 days. Now this one right here is really interesting to me. This is the 27th. We're getting down to the mid-Atlantic here. This keeps getting farther and farther to the south. Or is it further and further? Anyway, don't you love the English language? Because it's an interesting question, seriously. It is on the model further south, but distance-wise, it's also farther away from where it looked like it was going to happen before. But it's important. I want to hone in on this for a second. a couple of things about it. Let's use Eastern U.S. There we go. Uh, we have a strong high pressure area to the north that helps to bring in that cold air down at the surface. And just looking at the gradient here and the overall, like the snow gradient, looks like some pretty darn heavy snow in northern Maryland, southern PA, parts of the Delmarva area. And I live here. That's pretty easy to get to right up the I-95 corridor. And I'm thinking I might take a couple of the kids up there to show them some snow. Seriously. And if I do, I'll show you as well. This is over the weekend. There might be a mission here. And the kids, I wanted to take them to the North Carolina mountains, but we're going to be too warm. But yeah, this is like a quick hit of wet, heavy snow. We'll see. But it keeps dropping south, and I can prove it to you. Look at the run before this, the run before that. See where I'm getting at? Like we went from that to this. We'll see. Maybe it gets far enough south that it's just northern Virginia and into the DC area, which right now looks like kind of a mixed bag. But I got my eye on that. I have to show my daughter, especially. She will love this if this comes to pass. And it's easy for me to get to. So, anyway, let's get back to the full lower 48 here, or the CONUS as it's called. That is 5 days out. And then finally, things calm down as we approach, well, to some extent anyway, the last couple of days of the year with just more of these northern storm systems moving across and dumping some pretty good lake snows. Not quite to Watertown and Buffalo yet. Buffalo, of course, down here, but um, still a few lake plumes coming off as we get towards the very end of 2025. But we need to stop at 1 week. Yeah, that's all we do for the official look at things. Let's see what we got here. Who we got? Who do we got? Captain Cheese Whiz cooking in Iowa for Christmas. Going to be interesting. Another year of abnormal warmth at Christmas. Yep, that's true. And that's going to be interesting too as we get into 2026. We'll talk about more of what the plains states have for precip. When that's below average, it tends to affect severe weather season, but that's several weeks away. And we'll have an expert come in and talk about that. That's the other cool thing about this show, where I'm hoping that it starts to grow with people and they tune in, is we're going to have regulars that come on and give insight to things, and we'll learn a lot. All right? All right. So interesting days ahead. I can't wait to show my daughter Daphne the potential that maybe we're going to hit the road this weekend. So what's next? Um, Political tweet. Don't know why this is up, so we'll kill that. I forgot my INSO news. That's right. I wanted to talk about El Nino coming up. I guess I got some of my slides out of position. So we're going to cover some of this stuff in a little bit. That's Monday. I messed up my graphics and my order. So let me jump off the screen share, and I'm gonna go over here to my Zoom. Where did my Zoom go? There it is. And let's get my guest here. There we go. Finally, into the building. And I'll give him a second because he doesn't know that I'm going to do this probably. So let me send him a text and ready to go. All right. So once we have our guest, uh, and you see the name there, Steve Williams, he'll pop on. Da-da-dum. He's probably, yeah, I told him roughly at the bottom of the hour. There he is. So fire up your audio, please, sir. Unmute yourself.
Good morning.
There you are. Yeah, I had my show stuff out of whatever, and accidentally had a political tweet loaded up. That would just, woo, can't have that. Because I'm not an expert in that arena. Anyway, so you
That's an
look like
opinion
you're
only. That's not fact.
right. Looks like you're reporting to us from the International Space Station, so that's pretty cool. Wouldn't that be awesome? Not to diminish that you're an airline pilot, but if we literally had an ISS crew member, that'd be funny. Anyway, I'm easily distracted, as you can tell. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce my good friend Steve Williams, who lives right here in Wilmington, North Carolina, and he is a pilot for a prominent U.S. carrier, and you also serve in the National Guard, if I'm not mistaken.
Retired from the Coast Guard 2 years ago from the reserves.
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, I thought you were the National Guard at some point as well. Sorry. I've known him for years, and you think you know people. Well, we have you here because you told me the other day that this is going to be one of the busiest travel days, and I want to talk about air travel because I've done quite a bit of it over the last few years with my work, especially that I've had my relationship with Fox Weather, been able to cover a lot more weather around the country. So I've been on a lot of planes, and it's funny because you know exactly the planes that I'm talking about, not only the carrier, but the type, because we talk about it often over text. And sometimes I ask you about the weather or turbulence, which is related to the weather, or Steve, what is happening at such and such a terminal and why? And 99% of the time, you know the answer because that is where your expertise lies. So I thought it'd be great to have you on and we talk about flying from a weather perspective. And we often meet up in town here for some mission barbecue or a sandwich somewhere, and we talk weather mostly and some family stuff. And I figured let's just do that here, except I don't have my turkey and you don't have your ribs or whatever it is you order. But we're just going to
The
chat.
brisket, no ribs,
Brisket.
brisket.
Right. So, where do you think we should start? You know, it's a very busy travel day. I'm gonna go back to the screen share, and I do need to pull up the old FlightAware as well. Let's go back to the satellite. So we talked about out west, how busy things are, and I'm gonna grab a new tab over here, and we're gonna pull up FlightAware, and let's approach this from the meteorological side of things. And there's the misery map. We'll slide that over. All right, so out west, we got the big storm coming in. As a pilot, weather-wise, what do you see here? What does this make you, like, what's up?
Let me just say first and foremost, I apologize. I have a Zeke lozenge in my I have
Yeah,
a Zeke lozenge in my mouth. Three of the people who live in our house have had the flu, and I am eating zinc and airborne like Halloween candy to stay asymptomatic and to not be a flu symptom member of the Christmas holiday here. So
right.
I apologize for that first and foremost. But yeah, so looking here, Mark, I see the low pressure area, obviously, and the moisture coming off of the Pacific into the Pacific Northwest, into Northern California, as well as the low pressure is moving off the Canadian Maritimes and the Great Lakes region. We can't rule out the snow showers and the low pressure up there north of Chicago and over central Michigan, even up to the Upper Peninsula there.
Right.
Um, the stuff down in the Caribbean and the Western Gulf of America there, that's just typical cumulus, maybe
Yeah,
some occasional, cumulonimbus and some thunderstorms, but for the most part, that's just typical cumulus clouds and whatnot. Actually, very generally speaking, down south this time of year is very beautiful to fly.
sure, sure. So if we look at the overall pattern here, if you're flying out of Wilmington, and we'll use the yellow color, which I do a lot, and I'm gonna go over here to DFW, roughly in here. How's that looking for today, just from your perspective?
It's looking okay. Ironically enough, and this may seem a little odd, but very rarely do I ever look at a chart or a map like this to reference this cloud cover.
Right,
And the reason that is we operate under all airline flights, generally speaking, operate under instrument flight rules. So whether we have clouds or not,
doesn't matter.
it really doesn't matter to us. Now it does matter if there's thunderstorms,
Right,
tropical weather,
yeah,
volcanic ash. There's definitely things that we can see on satellite that we can see would be hazards to fly in. But we look more objectively at specific airport information as far as like the METAR, the local weather observation, visibility and clouds and that sort of thing. So to just look at a map, not to downplay it, but to just look at a map from Wilmington to Dallas or Denver or
right.
wherever without looking at the actual weather at the destination, it's kind of hard to make a decision or to make any objective statement.
Right, because there is definitely more to the story, and that's a great point there that you're not just looking at cloud cover. Now, obviously, you're going to avoid any convective stuff. That's pretty, easy to figure out. But, there could be very strong wind even though there's no clouds. You can have a very strong surface wind, and that can affect airports. Um, so today, December 22nd, extremely busy travel day. Um, you're going to the airport, you got the family, you're heading out today, tomorrow, whatever. Uh, what what should people like? I don't want to make this very typical. I told you I don't want to make it like an interview when like we're talking. What are some of the biggest mistakes people are making when they are traveling and they forget about the weather, so to speak? Like, and then how can they correct that, in the situation? They forget about the weather. They're so worried about making sure they've packed everything and they get to the airport and they're in Charlotte and they're trying to get to San Francisco, let's say. Um, and they don't realize there's a major atmospheric river coming into that region. There's probably going to be delays, right? And then they start to get angry. So where does that, like, how can they shift that so that it's easier?
I think I always tell people that, and all of us are guilty of this, myself included. But I always tell people when you go to the airport, you have to bring the patience with you, and patience is probably the most important thing to bring to the airport. To be brutally honest,
Right.
um, and that's not just for the weather. That's not just for anything affecting the airline, but the whole operation as a whole. Security, getting to the checkpoint, dealing with any other parking. Like our local airport is going through a massive renovation
Yeah.
expansion project, and a lot of people who live here and moved here in our area the last couple of years that caused our airport to grow in a positive way, they may not be aware of some of the parking and logistical challenges of getting in and out of the airport. So I think patience and allowing yourself plenty of time, first and foremost, is important. And before you even get to the airport, speaking of giving yourself plenty of time, if you absolutely have to be somewhere by a certain time, I wouldn't give myself just one flight to get there. When I go to work, I give myself two or three options to get to work. I'm not, I'm based in South Florida. I don't live where I'm based. So I take an airplane to work every week.
Right.
But I very, very rarely, if ever, give myself one flight to get to
Right.
work.
Interesting.
And I would say do the same thing when you book a flight. I know Mark and I even talked about that a little bit during hurricane season. I
Yeah.
think trying to get to Bermuda. We were talking about that last storm that skirted Bermuda, and you were thinking about doing a field mission.
Right. Right.
Mark called and said, "What do you think?" And we got to looking at it, and I was like, "You're not going to have a backup,
Right.
or whatever." And I think that's important, And I think when you have a backup and there's other options, I think it lowers the stress, and I think that it definitely is a little is stress lowering for sure, and gives you a chance to know that you're gonna make it. And the other thing I think worthy of noting here, and you hate to bring the politics into it and whatnot, but there's a political component here with the government, and not political meaning left or right, but
Correct.
there's a
Correct.
government deal here where we're short of air traffic controllers, and
Yeah.
a lot of the air
I'm
traffic
going to ask you
controllers,
about that.
a lot of air traffic controllers resigned and retired during the pandemic,
Hmm.
and the FAA was not in a position to, for whatever reason, you know, those keep some of those opinions off the air here, but for whatever reason, the FAA was not in a position to hire and train replacement controllers.
Well, I
And we're
imagine
and
that
we're
being an air traffic controller, you don't learn that from YouTube.
no, and you don't learn it overnight,
Right. Exactly.
100%. And they, for whatever reason,
Kind of important.
I love the term that you use. I think the term that you use during hurricane season quite often is geopolitical concerns. I think is
Yeah.
what you use or something.
Right.
And then that's probably about the best way of putting it. But there's definitely a component to that.
Yeah.
And I think that and so we're short of controllers is ultimately what I'm getting at. We're short of
Yeah.
controllers.
Yeah. That's a fact.
And and this administration here, they're in the same boat the previous administration was in, and they're trying, but it doesn't happen overnight.
Right. You can't fast track that. That's really, really important. As I was going to ask you about that, if you had to pick the top three things that can snarl national air traffic, what would they be? And would weather be the first one? That might be a tough one to
Um,
figure out. Now, barring an emergency like 9/11, where something comes along
Correct.
unexpected. But, you know, I would think, and not to put words in your mouth, that the weather would be the number one cause, but maybe not. Maybe in a technologically driven world, think about it for a second. What would be the top three things that could just, today is just going to be an awful day to travel? Oh my God, like something like that.
I think weather probably is. I mean, I think weather, and even with as good as forecasting is, and forecasting is excellent. Aviation forecasting is fantastic. The TAF that gets created for each individual aircraft. For those of you not familiar, TAF stands for Terminal Aerodrome Forecast. That's a
This is what I
specific
wanted.
aviation
I wanted to get
product.
into the weeds of this stuff. Then now it's coming out. I like this.
Yeah. The TAF, the Terminal Aerodrome Forecast, that's actually accessible, I think, on weather.gov. If you dig in there deep enough,
Right.
um, then you can get access to that. But more, 9 times out of 10, I would say 80 to 90% or better accuracy of the visibility and the ceiling reported. It's pretty freaking accurate on the TAF there. So with that being said, the TAF is accurate. However, um, there's still unknown. It's kind of like I guess in Mark, in a lot of ways, it's kind of like the track of hurricanes. The track forecasting is getting really, really good for numerous reasons, especially inside 2 to 3 days. But the intensity forecasts are still lacking yet, right?
Right.
And I think it's the same thing with local weather. The overall big picture, hey, it's going to rain or it's going
Right.
to be low visibility, but to what extent and exactly how bad is it going to be? And there's we're getting good at it, but we're not 100%. So there's always that unknown. And when it comes to delays, the airplanes don't have a problem flying in it. Short of a thunderstorm, flying in clouds, flying in
Right.
rain, fog,
Yeah, I'm going to ask
generally
you about
speaking,
that.
is no problem.
Right.
The This gets back to the air traffic control issue, and it's not so much a staffing issue. It is a little bit of a staffing issue, but the bigger problem with it is they have to maintain certain amount of separation. For
Yeah.
instance, on a day when there's not a cloud in the sky, you're going into a hub, Kennedy, LaGuardia, Chicago, pick your poison. Usually 2 to 3 miles is all they're required to have between airplanes horizontally going to a runway. But when the weather's bad and it's foggy, or they're doing ILS approaches or PRM approaches, which are precision runway monitored approaches, we're talking 5 to 7 miles.
Mm.
So if you think about that, 2 to 4 is double.
Yeah.
So if we're going from 3 to 5 to 7, roughly, we've decreased capacity by what, 50%?
Sure.
So if you got
So it
100
starts the
airplanes coming in,
domino effect. Yeah.
correct. So you got 100 airplanes, inbound to Chicago at any given time, and you just got to cut the capacity back to 50 airplanes an hour to maintain the required separation. So it really gets detail oriented to where the weather truly affects it.
So speaking of the weather, obviously talking weather, so that's pretty much all we should be speaking of. But um, you talked about that, flying through the weather, that yeah, that's what planes do. So that is one of my biggest concerns when I fly, and it's just the irony of it all, is what's the weather going to be? And it's not because necessarily I don't want to have to fly through bad weather. I mean, nobody wants to do that except the hurricane hunters, I guess, and they do it for their jobs. But I try to avoid it because I don't want there to be airport delays, or what we call in our small circle of friends and colleagues shenanigans. We don't need any airport shenanigans. And so if I'm going to fly, I got to get out to the Midwest for some hail work or something. I'm trying to fly to Dallas direct. I try to avoid Charlotte as an example. And um, when I'm ready to go, I also want to make sure when I come back, especially if I'm going to cover a big winter storm, maybe the nation's midsection again, how is my travel back east? Because I don't want to get stuck somewhere because, as you know, when it's a weather related cancellation, you're on your own. If there's a mechanical problem with the plane, then oftentimes, and I've actually had this happen once, the airline puts you up at a hotel, they rebook you, and so forth. But when it's weather related, everybody is in that boat, so to speak, and it's really problematic. And I don't like getting stuck. I try to keep the schedules, want to get home, back to the family, whatever. And so when I am flying, that is the number one concern for me is the weather. What's the weather going to be so I can get to where I need to go? Because where I'm going, there's probably going to be some bad weather. So I try to get ahead of it, and then I try to leave and give it just a little bit of a buffer so that that weather can get on past Wilmington. I've literally, Steve, sat there and waited an extra day so that some storm system could come on by and go ahead and get past Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, Charlotte, and Wilmington so that I don't get stuck in Charlotte. And that's just me. But I remember one time I was coming in from somewhere and we were approaching, you'll know these terms more than me. I think we were flying over downtown Wilmington. and to come in at ILM. That's our airport, not Industrial Light and Magic. And
I've
we
never
were
heard that before.
just about to land. We were coming in. I'm always the window seat guy. And I don't remember if we were on an Embraer 175 or like an A319, the Airbus. Probably doesn't matter, but we were. So first of all, let's just break this down. What approach was that? You certainly know that.
That would be the visual approach or the ILS approach to runway 6.
Gotcha. And I remember it was very low clouds. The ceiling was very, very low, and we're coming in, coming in, coming in. And I remember I couldn't see out much at all, and that always makes me nervous. When I can't see, I'm thinking, the pilot can't see either. But anyway, and we're just about to touch down, and just out of nowhere, thrusters come on, whatever, and we just take off again. And it scared the crap out of me. And I texted you. It's like, dude, I don't know what just happened. And I remember we flew, and we were low enough that I was able to get cellular signal. I was not using the Wi-Fi, and had my Google map, and I was watching where we were flying on my map. We went up towards New Bern and out over Holly Shelter and all that, turned around and came back from the north. And he tried again. And we almost touched down, didn't quite do it, and took off again. And I was totally, I mean, my blood pressure had to just be dangerously high. And I was really frantic. Steve, dude, I don't know what's going on. This is the second, what do you call it? You're like, well, that's a go around, I think is what you said. And people on the plane are starting to get nervous. You can hear them. And he flew around again, and he's coming in for the third time. And we're getting close, getting close. I can hear the guy behind me. He's like, just land it, just land it, just do it, just do it. And we finally landed. I was like, oh, thank goodness. So unpack that for me. What happened? And I asked you this. I says, was the pilot up there like, wow, man, this is a normal day, no problem? Or was there a little bit of, oh, crap? And you can be honest about it. Like, what happened? What was that all about? Because that's a frequent thing, these go arounds, right? And let's talk about why.
Yeah, they are. So first and foremost, it's way more benign in the front of the airplane than it is in the back. And I think the reality of that is because you don't really expect it coming in the back, and it just happens. The engines obviously spool up to go around thrust. The airplane's changing configuration. The gears coming up. You got to think what you're doing here, Mark, from a physics standpoint. You're taking this machine that weighs, depending upon the aircraft type, somewhere between 75 and 225,000 pounds, and you're arresting an 800 foot per minute descent and turning it into a 2,000 foot per minute climb, all in about 5.5, 6 seconds.
Oh,
And you're taking, I mean, and that's done by pitching the aircraft up, configuration changes, getting the
yeah.
landing gear raised or whatnot. So it's physically, it's I mean, in the law of physics, it's basically turning dead dinosaurs into altitude, for lack of better,
Quite an abrupt change for sure.
yeah, abrupt change. And the thing is there's been a lot of studies on that, and there's something nowadays called a stabilized approach. Now, I was not there, obviously. I can't comment on why they went around. Could have been a wind shift, could have been the approach wasn't stable, which the wind shift could cause the approach to not be stable.
Well, it was
Um,
very foggy and very low ceiling, is what I remember.
yep, and it could have been they just didn't see the runway, didn't see the approach light, didn't see the runway environment required to descend down a little bit further. There's some criteria there that allows us to descend beneath the minimums if we have the approach, the runway environment in sight. And when the tower closes, and the tower, if it's super late at night, the tower is not open at Wilmington, then we don't have the luxury of some approaches that we have when the tower is open. Some of the lower visibility approaches, Cat 2 operations. I think to ILS 6 or ILS 24 in Wilmington, there's a Cat 2 approach, which will allow us to go down to the decision altitude typically of 200 feet above the runway down to 100 feet above the runway.
Right.
But if the tower is not open, that is not, most airline ops specs do not allow that to be used.
Sure.
So, so really what's happening there is essentially as soon as the pilot realizes, hey, we're at minimums, we don't see the runway environment, we're not safe to continue. It starts out with a call around, go around that's announced in the cockpit. Either pilot can call the go around. Either pilot feels unsafe, stabilized approach criteria is not being met, whatever, either pilot can call the go around, and you go around, you put the, essentially what's happening is you put the thrust to it, you go to go around thrust, you usually go to your go around flap setting, and that allows the aircraft to pitch up and to start to accelerate. As soon as you get a positive rate of climb, you bring the landing gear up. And when the landing gear comes up, you just climb out of that altitude. It becomes a normal takeoff at that point. And
Right.
then approximately 1,000 feet above the airport, then you start cleaning the airplane up normally, meaning clean up, bringing the flaps up, coming back to normal climb power, and that sort of thing. And then you regroup. At
Try
that point,
again.
you do the after takeoff checklist and talk to the flight attendants, talk to the passengers, and determine why do we go around? Is it safe to go try it again, or whatnot? And I would imagine, it sounds like if they went up north of the airport over the Holly Shelter Game Land, did some holding, it sounds like, reevaluated, came back in and possibly tried to land 2-4, coming in the opposite direction. It's not uncommon for one. There's a piece of equipment called a Transys. I'm embarrassed. I don't know this off the top of my head. There's a piece of visibility equipment on the airport called a transseismometer, I think, and it's two, like, you see them a lot adjacent to the runway, like maybe 100 yards apart, but they measure visibility.
Yeah.
So that may be at one section of the airport there may be fog, or over that particular instrument there may be visibility be reported as something. But over there off of Blue Clay Road, where the approach
Yeah.
is to 2-4, it may not be as foggy.
Sure.
So coming in the opposite direction, and when it's foggy, when it's that foggy, wind really isn't an issue, because if it
Right.
was really windy,
Right.
the fog wouldn't be there.
Right.
So you can land, opposite direction without the wind really creating a safety issue or exceeding a
Sure.
airplane limitation.
Yeah, that one.
So there's a lot. There's a lot to it technically. I mean, this, it's way more. It feels worse for the back of the airplane than it actually is.
Yeah, so that's the other thing I want to talk to you about is just what we feel like as passengers is clearly way different. I have to keep thinking, anytime, especially when we're in turbulence, and which is my least favorite aspect, that, you guys know what's happening up front, and just I need to trust in that. Sometimes sitting on the window, I feel this to my detriment because I can see, and now that I do use the Wi-Fi on the plane regularly, I can see the radar and everything. I'm like, oh boy, we've got some weather coming up, and it starts to get bumpy. It makes me nervous, but I realize, these planes, like there hasn't been a plane lost to turbulence. I can't even name it. Like it's just extremely, extremely rare that turbulence itself will bring down an airplane, especially something modern within the typical domestic and international U.S. fleet. And so turbulence, of course, just the differential heating of the earth, making the atmosphere rise and fall. Um, People don't like that. And so how do you know, let's talk about that. How do you know, like usually there's I guess it's the pilot, the captain that'll make the announcement, right? Or is it so like, is there a standard where it's the pilot that does the announcement? Ladies and gentlemen, put the thing on because we're going to have some turbulence. Or is it sometimes the flight, like the flight attendants? You know what I'm getting
They
at? Is there
both,
a protocol to it?
yeah, they both will. Ultimately, the protocol is the announcement has to be made if the seatbelt sign comes on due to turbulence. Most airlines operation specifications that are mandated by the FAA and procedures state that, hey, an announcement we made, hey, we were encountering turbulence, the seatbelt sign is on, please stay seated.
Right.
Um, some airline dictates that the captain do that. Some airlines specifically dictate the flight attendants.
Gotcha. Okay.
In my particular airline, it just has to dictate that it has to be done. It doesn't matter.
Right. Boom. Right.
I normally, if I bring the seatbelt sign on in flight, I try to go ahead and just make the announcement, just because usually our flight attendants are conducting their service or
So,
attending to other
right.
passenger needs.
So, like, I've noticed that there'll be an announcement that we're expecting some turbulence, moderate, whatever, coming up in a few minutes, and everybody's buckled in and we're ready to go, and then we hit it a few minutes later. How do you know that? Is it, Roger, 10 miles down the road from you, so to speak, that, oh, like when you're driving in a convoy hey, watch out, there's a deer on, like, how do you guys know? Is it automated? Is it literally? I'm very curious. You're getting texts from Bill up there and, Southwest 638. And, oh, I'm telling you what, Steve, we just got some pretty bad whatever there. Look out. And then, all right, thank you. How does that work?
Funny that you asked because it's really that simple. When I first started flying, I've been flying for 25 years at the airlines, and when I first started flying, you would get a turbulence number, a TD number on the release, our flight release, which every airline flight gets the FAA mandated flight release. That's a whole other discussion,
Right.
or whatever. But on the flight plan, you get a turbulence number, and it shows on the whole route, the turbulence number may be this, maybe lower here and there. And of course, that's being derived from different, charts and weather charts and prog charts and everything else. That number gets derived. Well, even since when I first started flying back in 2000, we've always relied on another aircraft. The guy ahead of you, always giving a route report. And air traffic control is really, really good. The center controller is the guy who controls the high altitude sectors. They do a really, really, really good job of making note of where the turbulence in their sector is being reported and at what altitude. So if I called up and I was, airline XYZ 3010, we're getting light chop here at 330, can we request higher?
Hmm.
He'll make a note on his radar scope of where we requested higher, where the ride was, so they can pass that along to other pilots.
Okay.
Um,
Good to
but there's
know.
a cool app. There's a cool app out now, and this is where technology is coming in. That's super, super cool. I'm a huge advocate. When I first started flying, everything was paper, but we've
Yeah.
since gone to everything's on the iPad. But there's an iPad app out now that most all of the major airlines are using called called SkyPath, and they've actually got a civilian. They've got a civilian. I say civilian, non-airline side to the
Yeah.
app. I think it's subscription based,
Hmm.
but these iPads sit in these airplanes, right? And they sit in the cockpit, either on a pivot mount or some sort of other mount where they're rigid, and they can be picked up and moved as the crew sees fit. But they sit in the app in the mount. Well, these iPads have accelerometers, GPSs, all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff in them. Well, they will also record turbulence now,
Right.
and they will project turbulence onto a map. So I can pull up in the cockpit, I can pull up a SkyPath map and see where all the reported turbulence is around me, about what kind of aircraft, what the G loading was, the whole 9 yards. Um,
That's
and
amazing.
yeah, it's and most airlines now have have a
Hmm.
Wi-Fi partition for the pilots to use.
Right.
Now, granted, they can't get on the YouTube, they can't get on
Right.
the social media and the whatever, but anything that's aviation, weather, safety, company related, you can access.
Yeah.
And the company intranets or whatever is set up for that. And this is one of those things where the technology is playing a huge part.
I like that. It's kind of like
Um,
crowdsourcing. When we're
correct.
driving along, my wife uses Waze, and it'll be like, pothole reported ahead, and you can see it on
Yep.
the map. It's coming up. It's coming up, and then there or not there. Police reported ahead or whatever. And so
Yep.
you're right. These devices here have all that tech built in, and
Yep.
Google can track the traffic flow because everybody has Google on their phone. That is pretty cool. I didn't realize that it can literally pick it
Yep.
up in the plane, and that becomes crowdsourced into SkyPath. Wow.
Yeah, that we call it Skylies. Most of the pilots call it Skylies because sometimes it's not always accurate,
Right.
and sometimes it reports turbulence when there wasn't any turbulence.
Right.
But you got to remember,
Well, and
it
turbulence can be very
reports what it
transient.
has. Well, correct. That's what I was just about to say. It reports what it sees when it sees it,
Yeah.
but that may be 20 miles ahead for me.
Sure.
So in 3 minutes, 4 minutes when I get there, I pass
Atmosphere can
through.
change.
I
Yeah.
correct, and there may not be any turbulence then.
Same thing with Waze. It says object on road ahead. You get there and there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Whatever. That's really
Well,
interesting.
at least Waze gives you the option to report that the hazard is no longer present.
Right. Well, what Waze needs to do is buy this app and then we're good to go. How about that? And here's it could be called Airways.
There you go.
A good play on Airways, like U.S. Airways, like the company, and then Air
Yep.
WAZE. All right, I want to
There.
share my
That's a good
screen.
point.
Um, so that's a free one right there. Anybody does that, you just credit me in the end credits of the app. Where the hell? There it is. So let's talk about FlightAware just a little bit. We're past 11 a.m. I don't have a hard out or anything today, but I do want to keep things flowing though. So on the flight, let's just go to the home page. You know this app, this site pretty well. What's a good use for this on the non-subscription level for the average flyer? What can they use FlightAware to do to help them fly better, make it a better experience? We'll just start from the home page. What do you think? What advice could you give?
Well, I think the education component, Mark, is obviously the biggest point. I think the more you're familiar with something, the more comfortable you become with it, and the better you
Agreed.
deal with delays and turbulence and whatnot. The more you educate yourself to whatnot. There's obviously FlightAware is just a great entertainment value. There's tons of entertainment value with FlightAware as well. It's just incredibly neat to see, incredibly neat to see airplanes and what altitude they're at, what their ground speed is,
Sure.
and that sort of thing. So, I definitely, I think first of all, tracking your inbound airplane. I mean, you can look and see, you can look and see your airplane, for delays. Like you could type in an airplane right there, a flight number, pick an airline and a flight number. I don't know, just pick, or you pick a city pair. Do Mark, do KRDU to KJFK. Should be a route right there. KRDU to KJFK.
Like that?
Yep, try that and then click on that. All right, perfect. Scroll down. All right, pick one of those flights right there. Pick a
Arrivals?
yeah, pick arrivals, and I'm gonna make this a little bigger here. So I'm looking down at the screen, guys. I apologize. I'm just doing this so I can see what
Yeah, let's do Delta
pick
5 454. Or if you
perfect
got
from
a big one.
Dallas. Yeah, click on that.
Got there six
Yeah,
minutes
so
ago.
yep. All right. So yeah, so look here, you can see here where you see the aircraft details, the aircraft type, right? You see the aircraft type. See scroll back up to the top of the mark, please. Perfect. So you have the Delta Airlines 454. That's the call sign. So that's what you're hearing on air traffic control would be Delta 454.
Yep.
All right. And then it talks about Dallas, what gate it left from DFW, what time it left this morning. It left the gate 10 minutes early. And right on the right, you have one in gate Bravo 29 at Kennedy Airport and landed 11:02, which is 34 minutes early. One little weather piece is interesting about this.
Got
This
there
time of
early.
year going east, yeah, well, I was about to say this time of year, if we went back and looked at the jet stream, I would almost bet money that there's some section of the jet or high altitude winds right here, that allow right here. When they came up this way here, up over north over Missouri and Illinois, and came in. You got the jet.
Yeah, there we go. So this is at 18,000 feet. They flew at 25, it looks like.
It's probably
Um,
they probably stayed low to avoid the ride. I bet the ride was bad up high.
gotcha.
So they stayed a little lower for the ride. So they came up here, and I'm pointing on my screen, which obviously you can't see me doing, but they came up here from Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and then came in from the west there, right?
Right.
A good portion of this, the way they had a solid tailwind out of the west the entire way, and they left the gate early. They left the
Right.
gate early. They had a solid tailwind
So some of
or
these are
whatever there.
50 knots of tailwind easily.
Correct. So you add that to the true airspeed they flight planned at, and now you're looking at their ground speed increased by about 50 knots over their planned true airspeed.
How about that? So left early and got there quite early. That's
Correct.
great.
Yep. And then over here you see the aircraft details right there where you're at now. It's like the Airbus A220,
Right.
which is the old Bombardier C series that was sold to Airbus when Bombardier got out of the commercial aircraft market. Right. But interestingly enough, scrolling down a little bit further, Mark, I want to point this out to your viewers. Upcoming flights or whatnot. So That's upcoming flights on this city pair. Okay.
Hmm.
And then down below that's past flights on this city pair. So if you don't ever know the flight number, you can type in the city pair on uh, FlightAware, like Mark just did. You can go to upcoming flights and find your flight number there.
Sure. Sure.
And you find your flight number, and then you pick your flight, and you see if your flight is delayed or on time or whatnot.
This
So
one
this is
got
kind of flight
canceled.
specific canceled. Yeah,
Wonder
that
why.
was on that was on the 15th. I don't. That's the week ago. I don't even remember what was going on that day. Um, was that the weather up north? Or was that the day it had all the rain up north?
Probably. Yeah, a week ago. Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty nasty.
Yeah, that's probably exactly what it was. Um, if you go, Mark, go. I'm looking on my iPad here too, so I should have sent you the link. If you can um, go to go to flight tracking, top of flight aware, go to flight tracking, and then go to airport delays, the flight tracking and airport delays. So you get the so this right here is a good page right here. I love this graphic. You can look right here and see. Mark talked about earlier at the show there the Pacific weather. What did we talk about yesterday, Mark? We're not saying there was going to be delays.
Right. San Francisco was going to be a
I
disaster.
called this yesterday, and I said there's definitely going to be air traffic control delays here, and look what we see in NorCal. So you got that. Aspen, Colorado, also due to snow today. On the FAA's command center website, Aspen's experiencing delays and ground stops already. And small little airport, but nonetheless, a lot of people are going to Aspen for the holidays, Mark.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, Aspen, and then anywhere that would be yellow or red is bad news. So overall, the national airspace system here, with the exception of San Fran, isn't looking too terribly bad.
But
Um,
it could certainly have downstream effects, and that's what I think a lot of people don't
Correct.
realize. You're flying from Wilmington and you're trying to get to Seattle because you're going to get on, it's the summer, right? Let's just say it's summertime. You're going to try to get on a cruise ship and go up to the Alaska. And so you got Wilmington, Charlotte to Seattle, and then the Charlotte flight gets canceled. And well, what the hell? Why? He said, well, it was coming in from San Francisco. And well, what does that have to do with me? Well, in San Francisco, we had X, Y, and Z weather, and they killed that flight, and so your flight is killed as well, blah, 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 blah. And people get so irate because they just don't understand the interconnectivity of global air travel that and I remember in that movie, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, there's a great line in there when he's talking to his wife about he can't land in Chicago because of the snowstorm, and they landed in Wichita. And his wife says, I don't understand, Neil. What does a snowstorm in Chicago have to do with Wichita? Well, Steve knows.
I
What?
should say, I mean, we have the largest air transportation system in the world, obviously, and no surprise there. But it's so dynamic and it's so big now that you know, and this is not an airline specific. Everybody has their favorite airline for numerous reasons. They maybe live
Right,
near a certain airline. If you live in Atlanta, Delta's your go-to carrier.
right,
If you live in Charlotte, American is probably your go-to carrier for
right,
most needs. If you live in Atlantic City, Spirit is probably your go-to carrier. Spirit's got a huge presence in Atlantic City.
right.
Um, Fort Lauderdale, JetBlue.
Wow.
So it really just kind of, and I say all that to say this is not airline specific. These issues, ironically enough, truly are the bigger picture, where weather affects everybody, and it can affect airplanes coming in and going out and that sort of thing. Now, the airlines are using AI now and other ways to try to mitigate that by assigning aircraft to go on certain routes so if they have to reassign airplanes or whatever. They'd much rather cancel a Charlotte to Raleigh Durham
Yeah,
because they can put those passengers on a bus than
yeah,
cancel Charlotte to Seattle
right. Remember,
because
I
you
was
can't get.
really worried about that in
I
24
know.
because I had that exact scenario, truth be told. I was taking the family, a good chunk of us anyway, on an Alaskan cruise, and it was Raleigh to Charlotte, which just blows my mind. I mean, Wilmington to Charlotte, all right, I get it. But Raleigh to Charlotte, like, why is there not a direct flight from Raleigh to Seattle? Like, what are we even doing here? And it
Well,
was
there is on Alaska.
right, Alaska Airlines, but I see. I'm an American Airlines loyalist, and it used to
I'm
be
sure they
U.S.
appreciate that.
Well, they didn't used to be U.S. Air. They bought U.S. Air, so I was U.S. Air first, and then it got absorbed and is now part of American. And I'm a big fan of loyalty programs until they give me a reason not to be. And so far, American hasn't. Hilton hasn't. In fact, Hilton, where is it? Yeah, we've talked about this. There's my lifetime diamond Hilton card that it weighs like a few ounces. It's crazy how heavy that sucker is because I've been a Hilton honors person for 20 years. And they sent me this whole packet last year. And anyway, to get off on a tangent, I was very worried about that flight with the family because it was like a 1 hour connection in Charlotte. And I do want to talk about that. I know we've had discussions and I know you have nothing to do with it, but I was looking at potentially going to Washington State last week to cover some of that weather. I was just kind of in the first stages of looking at it. And some of the flights, and we've had this discussion, were Wilmington to Charlotte, Charlotte to Seattle. And it has this little thing on the bottom when you're looking at the flight times that says note connection time. And you click on details and it said connection time 30 minutes. I'm like, come on. You're not even off the plane in 30 minutes most times. There is no way you're making that connection. And again, I know you don't do scheduling and whatever, but that that's really frustrating. And is that industry wide? I'm not going to say which airline that was just to leave it out, but do all airlines do that? And then like why do they do that? If you can speak to that, because that's you're not making that connection.
Yeah, I think in a perfect world, all things equal for the bean counters and the marketing people that sit in the airline headquarters and make the flight schedules or whatnot. I think in a perfect world, yeah, it's definitely doable with an experienced traveler who knows how to get off an airplane, go straight to the gate. They've got their boarding pass ready, they've got their documents in order, they know what the
No
size of
check
the bag needs to
bags.
be.
Right.
Correct. There's a game here, right? Um,
I want to get that
and I think that
scheduler to sit with me next to me in like 3B. I'll be 3A. And let's see if we can make that. Roger, whoever it is. I've
well,
said
you
that
would
at
definitely
Wilmington.
probably
I want to get the traffic engineer in Wilmington to just ride around with me sometime and go,
well, I will tell
really?
you this. Well, I will tell you this. Seat selection is huge. If
Yes,
you're
it
sitting
is.
in seat 3A or 3B of any airplane, a 30-minute connection, so as long as you get to the gate on time, a 30-minute
Right.
connection is realistic.
Dude,
There's just no way around it. But I
we're
mean,
gonna have to
if you're
put some
sitting
money
back
on
and
that one day. I tell you what, if I win that almost $2 billion tonight, I have a 1 in 292 million chance. So there is a chance.
well,
I
the show going to happen. Is the show going to happen tomorrow if you win the billions tonight?
there it will happen, but there will be signs. Isn't that what people say? There will be signs. I tell you what I'll
But no,
do.
go ahead. I'm
I'll
sorry.
buy tickets and just to test this, I'll create a whole separate YouTube channel. Can he make the flight? I'll buy all those 30-minute connection times, and at the end of like a year, we'll add it up and see how many I made. Hey, that could be a whole YouTube thing right there. There you go. Talk about the algorithm. That would do it. I just need the funds to be able to fly and make those 30-minute connections and be the expert on it. Um, anyway, that is
What we were
frustrating.
talking about earlier, though, I think on a serious note, we were talking about earlier. I think this kind of comes to the preparation. I didn't, I didn't look at the schedule last week. You and I didn't speak to that. I know we sometimes speak when you're planning, but you know, if that was another flight, an hour and a half, 2 hours later, where hey, if I don't make this connection, Tom, then maybe there's still another flight I can hop on, or is there another airline I can hop on? Worst case,
Right.
if you got to be somewhere. I mean, but the reality of it is, the average traveler just doesn't know that, and
Yeah, clearly.
that's not demeaning or disrespectful towards them, but you
Well,
just
most people
wouldn't
don't know
know.
about the weather. That's another thing. Exactly. We go about our
Correct.
various concerns and we're completely unaware of what's happening. And that's a whole big reason why I wanted to do Talking Weather is just to get people thinking about it more. I do have a question that came from the YouTube chat that I want to throw at you real quick. Are there any efforts
Please.
from Weather Scott? Are there any efforts to modernize the turbulence tracking in the aircraft equipment itself, as opposed to a literal tablet brought with the pilot? So can the plane help to crowdsource this kind of stuff?
Um, you know what? That's a great question. I am sure in Boeing and Boeing has taken it uh Boeing has taken it in the shorts in a lot of way, unfortunately, the last couple of years. Boeing has been very challenging for Boeing in the commercial aircraft division.
Sure.
However, Boeing makes a great product, and I think Boeing is turning things around and made some decisions where they're getting back to the business of building airplanes appropriately. And Airbus obviously just has a fantastic product, as does Embraer on the commercial aircraft side. So that may very well be in the works. I'm not aware of any of that. I'm not aware of anything specifically, but I can't speak to like the A350, the A380,
Right.
some of the new 777X. There may very well be. Um, it's interesting though. A lot of people don't realize the actual connectivity of the airplane proper, using its ACARs, its satellite communications, and other things. You think it has all these communications available, but a lot of this stuff the airlines have to install after it comes out of the manufacturer, and all
Yeah.
airlines don't jump on the bandwagon.
Right.
So
Aftermarket.
I correct. It's true. It's same with the Wi-Fi. These airplanes don't come from the factory with Viasat or Starlink installed. They have to
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
through a whole another maintenance period to get Starlink or
Sure.
Viasat installed on the airplanes. And that's a great question, and something that's very it's very very valid.
Yeah. Yeah. And it would help, because I think there is some weather data that comes from planes that gets sent in automatically, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Um,
winds
yeah.
aloft, pressure, altitude,
Yeah.
outside air temperature.
Right.
That's 100%. That's 100% that does occur.
So
But
we're
that's
gonna have you
objective
back.
data, Mark.
Say it again.
I'm just let me just add real quick. That's objective scientific data. There's no hype there. There's
Right.
no. I mean,
Yeah.
the winds aloft are the winds aloft. If the 310 at 110 at
Right.
35,000 feet, that's what they are. If the outside air temperature is -46, it's -46.
Right.
Turbulence, in some respects, is subjective. And I would just add to this about the viewer's comment. You know, the way a turbulence affects a 777 would affect a Cessna Citation business jet totally different.
Yeah. Yeah.
The same air pocket or the same temperature deviation or whatever that causes that is subjective a lot to the aircraft type. And I will tell you, having the using the accelerometer on the iPad, as simple as that seems, we're not looking so much. It's more not so much the objectivity of how bad the turbulence is or whatnot. It's not a false report. It's just a report that it's there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if a 777 reported turbulence, I mean that may be light turbulence to a 777, but to a
Right.
business jet that may be severe turbulence,
Yeah. I think
depending
there was
upon airspeed and wing loading. There's a lot of variables there.
I think one flight that I had in the last few years, they came on and said that they were expecting, I think they said, it wasn't extreme, I think it said severe turbulence, and it didn't happen, and I was glad. It was bumpy, but I don't know, it's just something about not being in control. And I don't know. It's like I keep telling, like the airplane's built for this. They fly planes through them in Hurricane Hunters. Granted, it's a different type of plane. The pilots are experienced, which, by the way, brings me. I know that comedians have covered pretty much every airline joke we could probably think of, between Seinfeld, who I think started it. What is the deal with the peanuts or whatever, and Jim Gaffigan has done plenty. There should be something in the comedic world. Maybe I can use Sora and create a comedy version of me that'll do a joke based on this. There have been times, especially as I've gotten older, I'm 55 now, that I've come on the plane, and you can see in there as you come on, either through the window as you're coming through the jetway, you can look in the window, you see, and it's like that guy looks like he's 24 years old. And and I sat down next to Simon, to whoever, and I was like, man, the pilot seems really young, doesn't he? And the guy sitting next to me, he wrote the joke for me. Basically, he goes, "Yeah, I know. I mean, he's whatever." He goes, "I want to see some snow on the roof when I'm flying." It's like exactly. Uh, just I don't know, nothing against youngsters, but it's like, yeah, like you get on and you see, and Steve, you don't have the gray hair, but you've flown 25 years. That's what I want to see. It's just it's just flying is very personal. We think about um, the end game. You want to get there, but you run through scenarios of all the things that could happen safety wise. And anyway, I just thought that was a funny moment as I got on more than once. And it's like I'm old enough to be that dude's father. Now, as I get older, that's going to be easier and easier to do, obviously. But anyway, so
Well,
when
here's
you're
the deal though about the fly, and I'll just say that I want to add to that. Mark, you live a mile and a half, 2 miles maybe from our local airport as the
yeah,
bird flies.
yeah, tell
A
me
little bit
about
farther by driving. But Mark, you're safer getting on that airplane from Wilmington to wherever than you are driving up Smith Creek Parkway.
it, dude. Especially in Wilmington, you have
Yeah.
no idea, folks. And not to
Well, no, I do.
besmirch
I get it.
the port city, but we are not a serious city. Just don't move here. We're good. We're
I
full.
drove. I'd gone to Sam's last night. Me and my oldest daughter and I went to Sam's last night after we had left my dad's house for a little holiday get together and picked up a mobile order of groceries for my wife.
Hmm?
And we were coming back down College Road, and I was like, "This is insane, man. I'd
Yeah,
rather be in line in a snowstorm in LaGuardia waiting to go flying than out here in this mess." And
I'm
that's the
telling you.
honest truth.
Yeah. So that brings me to my closing point with you for today. By the way, we're going to have Steve back on Christmas Eve because we're going to have these storms affecting the West, and we're going to talk specifically about the weather affecting the West Coast, and we're going to drill down into some stuff even more. Today's a good introduction, but we're going to have Steve back on Christmas Eve morning. No show Christmas Day. Got to take that day off, but we will do this Christmas Eve. But I wanted to ask you, speaking of, I'd rather be in a line of planes at LaGuardia on a snowy day or whatever. When you're getting ready to go to work, you get up, you got X amount. You said you're Miami based. Um, what uh, what sort of what keeps you up at night? Like, is it the weather? Like, what is when you look at your stuff and you go, oh, this is just some days. Like, is it the weather that's going to cause that, or is it going to be more of an ATC personnel thing? Like, if you could separate them, which one gives you the most anxiety? A weather situation that you're going to have to deal with, or human caused shenanigans?
Well, the good news is nothing really keeps me up at night anymore in regards to airplanes. I've become pretty. I didn't.
That's pretty
I
good.
don't really
That's a
ever.
very confident. I like that,
I
honestly.
don't lose. I don't lose sleep over airplanes. I can tell you that. Now, um, get to the point of losing sleep. That's a whole other issue. And are you safe to fly the next day? Are you fatigued? Like if you're not sleeping, then you don't need to be flying anyway. So,
Yeah, yeah,
but I've been doing this a long time, and I'll tell you, the our air traffic controllers do an awesome job. So nothing really keeps me up at night per se, but it definitely is concerning. And the outcome of the airplane is never a concern, Mark. And I've told you that before. It's like the outcome of the airplane. We are going to operate 110% in accordance with applicable rules, regulations, and procedures. We're going to safely keep the airplane on the ground or get it on the ground if necessary.
yeah,
I think what does become challenging from a pilot and command perspective, is taking care of the people in the back of the airplane. And, you may be trying to get to wherever to go see your family or to conduct business. We want to make that happen. That's why you bought a ticket on our
yeah,
airline. But, the stress of that and the knowing, hey, we may have to divert
yeah,
or whether it could impact this with air traffic control. Like, it's not uncommon for there not to be a cloud in the sky and air traffic control to be doing 50 miles in trail and you leave the gate early and all of a sudden you arrive somewhere late. I had that happen last week.
hmm,
Not a cloud in the sky. Was going from in the Northeast down to South Florida, and we were at 35,000 feet getting vectored over the Outer Banks. I need to send you those pictures, by the way.
yeah.
I've got some awesome pictures of
I think you
Ocracoke,
did. I think you
and
did.
I posted them on Facebook. Yeah, and but it's like What are we doing? The weather in Miami and Fort Lauderdale, West Palm were all great. The president wasn't in town
Right.
down there, so there was no TFR. It's like, what are we doing? Like,
Right.
that part gets stressful, and it's like you want to deliver. By default, we want to get to where we're going. We want to deliver,
An excellent
for our
point.
customers.
Yeah.
But that is where but the weather and HCC are so intertwined.
Hmm. True.
But I want to be very clear. When I we spoke earlier about the shortage, our air traffic controllers do an amazing job, and there's not any. I've never second guessed them, and there's not any faith or any trust that lacks when it comes to those guys or girls. And they do an awesome job of what they have to work with. They're extremely professional, and they have all of our well-being at heart.
So that's, by the way, seemingly one thing we keep hearing is AI hype. You're not going to replace those human beings up there. You're definitely going to need that. I'm not going to go. If anybody ever announced, I don't care what political affiliation they are, oh, we're going to have AI controlling what. Dude, when I put into Chat GPT something, whatever, and it comes back with an 80% probability that this is correct, I don't want 80% probability running ATC. Sorry. So, point is, I think that's a pretty safe career path for people as a career, in terms
Yeah.
of that's not going to go away with technology. It's just going to hopefully make it better. And we can talk more about ATC stuff later because I intend to have Steve on often. But yeah, I was just curious about that. And you got a great point that all the stuff that goes on, and you have a group of 138 people on the plane that started off in a really good mood. They're happy about going to point B, but something went on between point A and point B that they had no control over, neither do you. And it means now they're going to be late and they might miss a connection. Now you have angry passengers, and it's not your
Well,
fault. That's
and we
hard.
talk about how dynamic the weather is. I can go to bed tonight and be showing rain and snow wherever somewhere tomorrow until I get up 8 or 9 hours from now and I
Yeah.
pull out the iPad, look at the flight plan, look at the TAF, look at the METAR. It's not objective at that point. It's what is it you say? You say what is it you say to hurricane season? This is hype
You're
and
right.
this is real,
Right.
or something to
Exactly.
that effect. I believe you say. Like, I mean, until you wake up the next, and it's kind of the same thing in medicine, right? A cardiovascular surgeon is going to go do a heart bypass tomorrow morning. He's obviously thinking about it. I'm sure when he goes to bed, he
Sure.
knows he has a day of
It's a
surgery ahead
big
of him.
deal. Yeah.
But until he gets there and he assesses the patient's current condition,
Hmm.
what the nurses reported to him from overnight, and whatnot, at that point, he's going to make his game time decision on whether it's
Right.
safe to do so, what approach he or she has taken. It's
Right.
very similar in flying. Like, what happens the night before is really kind of just hype, and you get there in the
Yeah.
morning
And
or the
it's
day
in
of
the
the
model.
flight,
Right. It's just
correct,
numerical
and then
model
you look at the
output.
objective data.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you have to literally open the window and see what the weather is actually doing. And at that point, it's nowcasting. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
let's do this again on Christmas Eve, and we'll
we'll
see
be here.
what's happening, especially at SFO. And I'll think of a few more things that I can run past you. But that'll be fun, hopefully, for us. And we don't see too many people miserable out there because it looks like, as I'm going to discuss in the remaining segment here on today's show, the forecast for out west is, as I talked about a little bit, is going to be really, really impactful. And that will impact flights coming from west to east. And we can dig into that more on Wednesday. Had to think about it. By the way, tomorrow we have 15 people between tomorrow and Wednesday, Christmas Eve, coming to the Sudduth household. So that's how big the family has gotten. We have all the kids, their significant others, and a grandchild. So yes, Grandpa Mark. That'll blow some minds out there. And
Well,
none
the
of them
question
are
is,
bright.
here's my question for you for this afternoon. Are you going to avoid College Road?
Correct. I don't think I have to go out for anything. Maybe to Harris Teeter at Mayfair. Yeah,
What
probably.
if you go the back way there?
Exactly. Yeah, but even that, I have to go on Market Street. This town, it was Jack Nicholson, his delivery as the Joker in 1989 when he said, "This town needs an enema." That's Wilmington.
Yeah.
No offense. It's just, oh my goodness. All right. Well, Steve, thanks for joining me today. We'll catch up with you in
It's
about 48
always a
hours or
pleasure.
so, and we'll see what's happening out, especially in the Western terminals. Did I say that right?
It sounds good to me.
All right. We'll see you.
All
Thanks,
right.
Steve.
All right.
All
See you.
right,
Have a good
everybody.
day, Mark. See you, buddy.
Thank you. All right, Steve Williams, my friend and pilot for a significant U.S. carrier, we shall say. We're going to look at FlightAware on Christmas Eve because this terminal right here out here at San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose down here, we're and probably even LA at that point, all the different terminals, it is going to be rough for sure. And we're going to see how that ripples because of the weather downstream from there. All right, jumping back into show stuff now. I should have had my little graphic up here that said INSO News, El Nino Southern Oscillation, but I did not. And here, let's get in here and uh, there, removed him temporarily. No, we don't need to report it. I just needed to, I didn't know if he knew he was not off yet. Go back to sharing the screen, please. What did I do? Oh, there we go. Sorry. Um, hey, you never know. He might start changing clothes for getting ready to go to the gym. We go to the same gym, and that would be horrible for Steve. Not anyway. So I didn't have my INSO news graphic ready, but it is time to talk about El Nino because I did have this. It is the last tab in here, even though we still need to talk about the warm Christmas, and we will. But INSO news. Currently, we have, I just got to get back on track here, so bear with me. Currently, we are in the La Nina, right? The abnormal cooling of the equatorial Pacific. But there's definitely a lot of talk lately, if you know where to look anyway, that this is going to switch and transition over to what we call a warm INSO event or El Nino Southern Oscillation. And some of the guidance that we look at, and we're just touching upon it here, not digging too deep, but the indications are that yes, we are headed in that direction. The Southern Oscillation Index, the 30-day is now negative at minus 1.32. 90-day is still at that La Nina threshold at plus 7. And the contributor for today, it's the difference in pressure between Tahiti and Darwin, way out in the southwest tropical Pacific. Today's contributor is 10, but the trend is down overall, steady but kind of downish on the 90-day. And it's once these numbers really get strongly negative, the 30 and 90-day, that we see that the pressure pattern has changed so that instead of strong easterly winds coming from an easterly direction, we start to get more of a westerly wind flow, and you take all this warm water in the Westpac and you start to shift it toward the east. You also downwell it, trying to draw three-dimensionally here in what's called a downwelling Kelvin wave. And then you really help to sow the seeds for this becoming a warm INSO instead of cold like we are in now, called a La Nina. And so, yeah, this is headed in that direction. The climate model's picking up on it. This is one of many, the CFS V2. Your blues are your most recent runs, the most recent 8, and they're a little bit cooler overall. The mean right down the middle here, just slightly under 1 degree Celsius warmer than average as we get toward the meat of hurricane season right through here. Just putting it out there, just telling you. And then finally, we do have the crashed tab. Why would that tab crash? I mean, seriously, it's just a basic web page. Come on, Firefox, do better. This is the IRI, the International Research Institute INSO forecast from Columbia Climate School, and a great read if you want to dig into this. But I like the charts and the graphics. And this one shows the probability of El Nino. Let's zoom in. There we go. Only at about 38% during the peak time of hurricane season. But that's way out at the end of the forecast period. And this is months and months away. We're concerned with deterministic models looking out beyond 7 days. This is August for crying out loud, so, a lot can change. However, that being said, these are larger climate signals, so they are a little bit easier to wrangle with. And, that doesn't mean that's reliable, but this isn't the same as a deterministic forecast of a storm system cutting across the United States. These are larger puzzle pieces. That being said, I like this little column over here, El Nino, 0%, 1% by these 3 month periods. And again, the peak at 38%, way out August, September, October. We'll see. We'll track how these change. We'll always check in with the INSO news toward the end of each month because that's when all the data has come in for that month. All right. All right. So yeah, major storm. We do have these travel issues. That's what our main topic has been. This will be the thumbnail for today's YouTube video once it's done. I did forget to put it up earlier. I have to remember to do that on Wednesday, but we're going to really be looking at the West and how this could impact travel on this very important week of travel. Finally, as we wrap up today's show, what about the future? Rumors of storms, anything showing up in the algorithm that everybody's talking about, all those shares and whatnot, sometimes sort of spurious, if you will, or even intentional that people do that. Who's doing that? Well, some people do. So let's see. Is there anything jumping out? Let's refresh this to the 6Z. Thank you very much. So we already covered the first 7 days, which is right here. And as we start to wrap up, that's December 29th, a week out. Not too bad, some lake snows, but that's about it. But beyond that time frame, anything that jumps out as being a major news-making, algorithm-tripping blizzard, nor'easter, bomb cyclone, whatever. Not really, just more. This is out at hour 3:18 in the beginning of 2026. More shenanigans out here in the West. Maybe I'll go out for one of these finally and can plan my air travel around such storms if I do so. But no, I don't really see anything that jumps out over the next 2 weeks as being any kind of a major storm system beyond what we've already talked about, which are these here. And these are definitely major. But remember, this is out into the future, way out in, again, I call it algorithm land because this is when people post. You'll see like some huge hurricane in the summer coming in, and they'll say, hurricane off New Orleans in 10 days, not a forecast. Or you know what I'm talking about. Well, if it's not a forecast, why did you post it? So we want to get ahead of all that stuff and give you the tools to see if it's even a possibility. And right now, looks like entering 2026 won't be too bad. So real quick before I let everybody go, let's look at 18Z. That's Thursday afternoon. That is Christmas Day. And thermodynamics, there it is. Temperatures, very nice. This is your 2 meter temperatures. Probably going to be very close to 70 degrees here in Wilmington, as an example. Upper 70s across a good deal of Texas. 80s down here in the lower Rio Grande Valley. Most of Florida, 70s and probably some 80s. All of these areas through here, 60s and 70s in the southern parts of the country, even the northern tier states, the freezing line way up north. So yes, the forecast of Torchmas looks like it is going to verify and hold on until at least the beginning part of 2020. I don't know, maybe the 30th we start to cool off again. But yeah, a very warm period coming up to be sure. All right. All right. Well, that was a very long talking weather, but that's the bottom line. That's the point, is we can go as long as we want to, especially when we have a conversationalist like we had with Steve there. On Christmas Eve, CJ said he should be able to join me, so that'll be good to get his perspective on flying weather, and just getting people to understand better how to sort of bring the weather into their daily conversation, at least mentally, to prepare for things so you're not caught unaware, especially in this case when you're flying, how impactful the weather can truly be. All right, that is it from me for today. We'll drop my video first, and then I'll say my goodbyes. Let me just look on the chat once more just to see who all we have and what they're talking about. I'll go back through. The good thing is I get a transcript of everything, so I'll see what all y'all were talking about. Thank you for joining in today. I'm Mark Sudduth for Hurricane Track. Hey, that's our brand. That's our YouTube channel. And for Talking Weather, I'll see you again tomorrow morning.